What is up, guys? So, welcome to my video on Sallustius. You know, I always mention Sallustius. I'm a follower of Sallustius. So, what does that mean? So, in this video, I am going to tell you my beliefs on how I view the gods and how I am being a modern day follower of Sallustius in the 21st century. And so, what do I believe? How do I see the gods? How do the gods see us? That's what we're going to talk about in this podcast. It's a podcast because it's going to be a lecture, but it's going to have pictures of the gods as I speak. And I hope you enjoy this video and find it insightful and give you some hope too. And maybe give you a new perspective on the gods if you have never heard this before. What's up, guys? So every so often I always like to put out a new video, especially for the ones that are newly subscribed to my channel, about my personal beliefs on what the gods are and who they are. You know, in a few videos, if you watch enough, you see me occasionally mention that I am a follower of Sallustius. So what does that mean? I'm going to talk about that and my view and how that paints the picture of how I view the gods that we all love and worship. And so I'm going to share my beliefs, give you some of what he had to say and how that reflects and changed my life. So that's what we're talking about today, is what is a Sallustian follower. As far as I'm aware, I just made up that word, calling myself a Sallustian follower. That is kind of a hint of what I'm going to do a video on next, probably, as the muses inspire. You know, when they flow, I listen and write this stuff down. And that you'll find out next time. So, Sallustius, though, and how that affects my beliefs and how I view the gods. Sallustius the Philosopher. So, he lived in the 4th century AD, or CE, if you want to be more modern. So, what does that mean? So, that means that Sallustius lived in a time when Christianity was on the rise, and he was a friend of Emperor Julian. People that know Sallustius' story know this. So this work on the gods in the world was a body of work to spell out what the beliefs on the gods were at the time. And so with that said, my spiritual beliefs come from a later time, after Homer, after Hesiod, and so forth. This is the Neoplatonic, I guess you could say, time. So it began with Plato, and that is what started this philosophy that Sallustius began to follow. And then he put his spiritual path based on the works that he believed in from Plato into his own words, kind of like what I do with Sallustius. So it kind of keeps going generation by generation. And the words of Sallustius, though, are what spoke to me and made the most sense to me. Again, I'm going to do another video, but with that said, what do I believe when it comes to the gods and how the world is? So how is this going to work is that I'm going to be reading from some select chapters, which are very short. So the chapters are only like 1 or 2 paragraphs, and I'm not reading the whole thing. I've done that before. If you go way back to the beginning of my channel, I actually read chapter by chapter Sallustius on the gods in the world. And this time I have a more modern translation, because I've mentioned before that Sallustius on the gods in the world, if you read it, the older versions, it is a little confusing on the wording. So the modern translations, which I can post in the description, make more sense to follow. So I'll read some of the work and then tell you how that reflects on my beliefs. Those who wish to hear about the gods should have been well guided from childhood, and not habituated to foolish beliefs. They should also be in disposition good and sensible, that they may properly attend to the teaching. They ought also to know the common conceptions. Common conceptions are those to which all men agree as soon as they are asked. For instance, that God, here, elsewhere, Godhood, divine, is good, free from passion, free from change, For whatever suffers change does so for the worse or the better. If for the worse, it is made bad. If for the better, it must have been bad at first. So what Sallustius is saying right here is that he's telling the people that you may have been hearing rumors about the gods and myths and bad talk and people talking negative about gods, like, you know, that Zeus raped women and all that. And he says you need to put those foolish beliefs to the side. And this is what we all agree on, that the gods are good. So you always hear me talk about Sallustius saying that the gods are good. And that is what he says right there from the beginning, is that no matter what you hear in the myths, that there is no God that is evil. And to get more deep into it, if you want to check it out, I don't think it's in my notes for this video because I want to kind of shorten it up. But he does explain what do the myths actually mean and the purpose. And so he says if you've heard bad things about these gods, he said you got to drop that and leave that at the door to listen to what I have to say. And what I have to say before I start my whole work is that the gods are good. They are free from passion and free from change. What does that mean? That means that the gods don't get angry, which is good news. That's good news because it means that if you feel like you've let the gods down, you feel like, man, I haven't prayed, haven't done ritual in, we'll say, even extreme years, and you come back, that's okay. Because the gods still exist, and the sun still shines. The earth is flourishing if you look outside during spring now, with or without your prayers. So we'll talk a little bit about the purpose of ritual a little later. I do want to kind of get into that, my beliefs on that. So that's actually good news. So that's good news to say the gods are good and they're not mad at you. So good stuff. So we are at a good start. So on that, we are going to read a little bit on chapter 2, again, a short paragraph on his views on what the gods are. Let the teachings be of the following sort. The essence of the gods never came into existence, for that which always is never comes into existence, and that exists forever, which possesses primary force and by nature suffers nothing. Neither do they consist of bodies, for even in bodies the powers are incorporeal. Neither are they contained by space, for that is a property of bodies. Neither are they separate from the first cause, nor from one another, just as thoughts are not separated from the mind, nor acts of knowledge from the soul. So this is beginning to split for sure away from the modern way of thinking. You know, we see statues of the gods and we think that is what Zeus looks like. That's what Apollo looks like. That is Artemis. And this teaching is saying that the gods have no bodies. They have no physical body. This is not what Zeus looks like, for example. They have no physical body and form. You know, Platon would later say, and that's another philosopher that there are books on his work. But Platon, a later philosopher, even later than Sallustius, would say that if humans or if horses were the dominant species of the planet, then the statues would look like a horse. Like Zeus would be a horse, and you'd have Hera as a horse. And, you know, they always say that the human form is how we relate to the gods because it's what makes sense to our minds. But that's not what they actually look like. I'm not going to get into more controversial topics on that I could, because that's not the purpose that I'm thinking. So I'm going to keep my mouth zipped on some things when it comes to other things. But yeah, needless to say that gods do not have bodies, because to be in a body would mean that they are limited, is what Sallustius says. And to not be in a body, they can be everywhere. And they are everything. And they are also, he says, eternal from the beginning. So what does that mean? That means that Heracles, that means that Asclepius, that means these gods that were born in these myths have been from the beginning. that they were never actually born, but had always existed. And all the gods are together, never separated from the first cause being the birth of creation. They've been here since creation, and they are all helping the universe together. All the gods work together to create the universe, and they are everywhere and in everything from the beginning. So to wrap it up, again, not to make this video way too long for the ones that are watching, we're going to talk about the meaning and the purpose of ritual, and how is it to appease the gods, to win favor of the gods. What is the purpose of ritual when we pray? What are we doing to give them, and how does that affect our relationship? And so this is actually good news. Again, the kind of what I was talking about earlier, for those that feel really bad because it's been forever since they've done certain things and they need to get back into it, that it's okay. You can pick up where you left off, even if it's been years and you feel like you want to start praying to the gods again. Then this is some good news. So this is going to be on who the gods, again, are and their attitude towards the ritual. So if anyone thinks that the doctrine of unchangeableness of the gods is reasonable and true, then wonders how it is that they rejoice in good and reject the bad, are angry with sinners, and become propitious when appeased, the answer is as follows. Gods do not rejoice, for that which rejoices also grieves, nor is he angered. For to be angered is a passion, nor is he appeased by gifts. If he were, he would be conquered by pleasure. So it is impious to suppose that the divine is affected for good or ill by human things. The gods are always good, and always do good and never harm, being always in the same state and like themselves. The truth simply is that when we are good, we are joined to the gods by our likeness. To live according to virtue, we cling to the gods. And when we become evil, we make the gods our enemies, not because they are angered at us, but because our sins prevent the light of the gods from shining upon us and put us in communion with the spirits of punishment. And if by prayers and sacrifices we find forgiveness of sins, we do not appease or change the gods, but by what we do and by turning towards the divine, we heal our own badness and so enjoy again the goodness of the gods. So to say the gods turn away from the evil is like saying that the sun hides behind the blind, or from the blind. So what does that mean? Like I said, that's good news. That means the gods are not angry at you. The gods exist. And whenever we feel like we are disconnected from the gods, it's really us being hard on ourselves. It's not that Apollo or Artemis or Aphrodite are angry and you're like, man, I just can't connect. It's really our mental blocks that are stopping us from connecting. Because when we do rituals, we are lining ourselves up in the right mind frame to connect with the gods if we stop beating ourselves up. Stop telling yourself that the gods are angry at you or they are really mad because you forgot to give them wine last Tuesday. That's not how it's working if you believe in this philosophy of Sallustius, that the gods are good. He says it multiple times in this work, and he says it again, and that they are not angry because they don't rise to passion. So that means that they're not going to smite you for missing your rituals or forgetting to pray or for doing this or that. And that when we disconnect from the gods, it's always our way of thinking. It's the way we're thinking. When we do ritual, we are lining ourselves up with them. When we think negatively or do something wrong, we step out of line with the good. And that's why, it feels like the gods aren't there, because the gods are in the good. So it's like he said, the sun's always shining, and to say it's not is like saying that if the blind can't see, that means the sun's not shining. So that's how it works. And so I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, this Spur of the Moment podcast. It was something I've been thinking about for a long time. Originally it was going to be a video, and I decided I'd rather show the gods and focus on them than just show my face as I tell you some of my beliefs. And I hope that you get a better picture of my thoughts in my approach when I approach these deities. And I learned a long time ago that I can go months and I feel bad for not doing rituals or prayers, but when I go back, they are right there like I had never left. So that should be an encouragement to those that I always read about, that they feel like they've been slipping when it comes to rituals and prayers or giving offerings, that the gods are always there. You look outside and you can see the sun, you can see life. That tells us that they haven't gone anywhere. And whenever we're ready to start prayers again, rituals again, they're there to listen. Souls that have lived in virtue are in general happy, and when separated from a rational part of their nature and made clean from all matter, have communion with the gods, and join them in the governing of the whole world. Yet, even if none of this happiness fell to their lot, virtue itself, and the joy and glory of virtue, and the life that is subject to no grief and no master, are enough to make happy those who have set themselves to live according to the virtue and have achieved it.